Welcome to the second Nature Calling Conversations for the National Landscape Association. Nature Calling Conversations bring together artists and experts from across disciplines to chat about artistic practice. This conversation is one of a series of 6 and part of a wider programme of work taking place across England until October 2025. For this conversation, the commissioned artists for the Surrey Hills National Landscape, David Blandy and Daniel Locke, talk about their project, Dawn After Night, Spring After Winter, a choose-your-own-adventure game trail with Dr. Lena Grinsted, Senior Lecturer in Zoology at the University of Portsmouth, who began by explaining a bit more about her research. Lena, I just wanted to start with you, and before we bring in David and Daniel and the work that you've already done collaboratively across your specialisms, could you please let us know a little bit more about what's so special about these sociable spiders and how you can relate this to creative practice?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Well, I'm an evolutionary biologist. I'm really interested in understanding how the world works and why we see such amazing diversity as we see in nature. And particularly, I'm fascinated by animals and animal behavior. And I'm really interested in understanding why some animals have evolved social behavior and the ability to live in groups, just like humans, of course. So spiders are fascinating for a lot of reasons, but the spiders that I study are really special. So they have evolved this ability to come together, live in groups, and share everything. So they share these tasks like building their webs together. They might share parental duties. Yeah, so they might have these little nurseries where they look after each other's young. And that is, of course, very unique for spiders because typically we think about spiders as being very solitary and very aggressive and cannibalistic. But even within groups of animals that are associated with these kind of, more aggressive traits, we do see some special cases where it's actually very beneficial for them to come together and live very socially together, very cooperatively together. So that's what I'm really fascinated by. I should maybe add, just to sort of link it into art as well, that from a young age, I was always very interested in both art and science. And I was always sort of a bit unsure about whether I wanted to go into art or science as a career. And it was a difficult choice, actually. But I did end up going towards science, but then maintaining a link with the arts and trying to incorporate art as much as I can within my scientific practices as well. And then through my science, I have then met Dan, who does all this amazing artwork, often, if not always, in collaboration with scientists. Isn't that right, Dan?
Yeah, a lot of the time. I've been working with scientists, for years now. I think about 15, 20 years or something in various different ways. So yeah, that's how I met you, working with another scientist who you're married to. Pretty random. But yeah, brilliant to get to know you guys and really lovely to have you here today.
So where has that segue happened then between Daniel's and David's practice, and especially with all that collaborative work they've done with communities in New Addington, and this relationship with Lena and her understanding of collaboration and community within spiders?
David and I have been working together for a long time as well. And one of the first sort of commissions we made was to deal with sort of scientific themes. At that point, it was developing an artwork in response to the 60th anniversary of the discovery of the image of DNA, which is a proper mouthful. We made an artwork called Helix that then got turned into a graphic novel called Out of Nothing. I think the weird thing about science is that it is a process of uncovering a story. It's not like storytelling and art, you make up the story. Science, you're uncovering or revealing the story that's there.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two sides to it, right? Because you need an awful lot of creativity in, as you say, developing your hypotheses, developing your research questions, but also thinking about how to address those questions, how to design the experiments, how to collect the data. But then at the end, so yes, you're uncovering that story, and you need a lot of creativity in all those different steps, and of course, trying to incorporate equity and fairness in all the different steps, of course, as well. But then once you have, as a scientist, once we have sort of uncovered that story, we know it better than anybody else, but we also need the ability to then convey that story. And that's where I think these kind of acting skills and artistic, other artistic skills come in quite handy, because we then need to not only tell this story to our scientific, colleagues, but also to the wider community. And if we're not able to convey that story in a way that a 5-year-old or anybody on the street can understand it, then there's not really much point in what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think the way, Dan, I mean, the way I've seen you handle scientific concepts and turning them into art is really amazingly helpful in engaging everybody to understand those concepts that we really are very keen to get out to everybody.
And I'm just really, what's really striking me or in my head is obviously that genre of the sci-fi. And I wonder, well, David in particular, how much of an influence has sci-fi been on you and your work, and what have you drawn from it?
And for many years, I was kind of in artistic life. I was anxious about ideas around narrative and around kind of what is high and low culture, what is permitted in the art space, and it was really through and a lot of pop cultural stuff was stuff that I was totally obsessed with during my teenage years when I was getting into art, but I was also doing other things. I was in bands and, obsessed with Aliens, the movie, and kind of all of those things were kind of milling around in the background while I was getting more and more into kind of, I don't know, fine art practice. So thinking about painting, thinking about when I realized that all my painting was sort of super derivative of other stuff, I kind of was encouraged to jack it all in and start trying using other things. It was sort of through a series of experiments that I found that working with found objects and working with the things that just exist around us and kind of thinking about our relationship to those things became something quite interesting to me. And then I started realizing that a lot of the time and a lot of my time, a lot of my kind of existence was working inside other worlds. So worlds that kind of existed in a parallel space, like the space that's inside a record. It's a space that has a reference to a particular time and place when a particular person was singing, a particular person was playing instruments. But often in a record, those, that will be a collage of lots of different times and spaces that are put together into that one particular song. And then, what is our relationship to this song that you love? That's kind of started to be something that I was really interested in. And that kind of cascaded into, well, then, what is my relationship to the films that I love, to the books that I read, to the various things that exist in the world. And more and more I wanted to make work that sort of slid into the world unnoticed. so and that's what's led me to make things like arcade game machines, to work with records, to work primarily in video. I mean, that's where a lot of my practice has been over the last 20 years, has been making video installations. So you're kind of entering into the image in some sort of way, often, relating to the video game space. But around 10 years ago, I started getting, obviously I had this history of sci-fi, but I wasn't like an avid sci-fi reader. I've kind of found a lot of the ideas, maybe slightly hackneyed and stuff. But then I started getting really into Philip K. Dick. So because I'm kind of coming through people like Borges and like kind of more experimental ideas around what how you relate reality through the written form. I mean, Philip K. Dick kind of like books like Ubik, where objects are devolving as you watch them. So they're going from kind of I don't know, like electric kettle down to a pot, down to kind of a thing on a fire. It's like this kind of idea of things devolving in the world around you, and it's one of the only books I've ever read that's made me feel actually queasy, because it's kind of it destabilizes your idea of what the world is in so many ways. And how can I relate that through something that isn't just like the world's going to hell in a handcart. It's like we have to have hope for a life that's going to exist, and we have to have hope in order to make the changes that we have to make. I'm hoping that it kind of creates that sense that there are people thinking about these things. We have solidarity in this space, and maybe even change some people to think about nature in a different way. So that all of that thinking is what's gone into Dawn After Night, Spring After Winter, which is taking two spaces and encouraging people to go from the kind of the rural, the urban space, which is just there. Like Croydon is right on the edge of like really kind of wild nature, really. and just through stepping through almost like a magical portal, like going down the side of a recycling center and down into this bank, the Hutchinson's Bank, and it's like a space of wildlife, a space where Dan and I came across a deer that was just standing in front of us, like while we were walking through. Kind of a chalk grassland that has all sorts of unique arachnids and butterflies. Really beautiful space, but just like behind a very suburban kind of road. Basically, it was kind of trying to lead people through that, and then also get them to not just see this space as as a place that's valuable and beautiful, which it obviously is, but also as a kind of a starting point for a work of imagination. So
I think there's like a weird link between the work that we've made, that sort of trifecta provides a link between the work that we've made and the work of the scientist, because you're trying to uncover the real, right? You're trying to get to what is the ultimate reality. Bro, it's like a weirdly like religious project that you're trying to get to. I know the scientists hate that sort of terminology, but that's what religious narratives are about, is to try to get to some deep fundamental understanding, like a unified understanding of the universe. And
so do you think sci-fi can help us understand the real world as well?
I think it does, but I don't think the real world exists in one place. I think everything that Dave has just said sort of uncovers the fact that the real world for humans exists in us, and we live in it. But the real for us changes, it fluctuates, and it's to do with this complex relationship between our personal identities and the way that identity relates to culture and the narratives and stories that we've grown up in. And the challenge of the scientist is sometimes to push back against those narratives. So like climate change, David's talking about trying to generate hope. We're in a pretty hopeless situation. But I recognize the sort of like importance of hope for us to get to the next thing. I also recognize the reality of being confronted by nature, like Hutchinson's Bank, one of the sites that we've made the work for outside of New Addington in Croydon, is an incredibly beautiful place. It's a tiny pocket, and I described it as a pocket of reality. It's this intense sort of in place where you can interface with reality. And I mean, by reality, I mean like the earth under your feet and the air in your lungs and that type of tangible stuff. But in order to get to access to that, you sort of have to engage with it, because we're humans, have to engage with it through storytelling, through imagination, and through like the unreal.
Yes.
But what I want to ask you is like, there's this book, Children of Time. So this is set in like a distant future where social spiders have evolved to be like the apex intelligence on the earth. They communicate through like vibrations in webs, these characters. That's right, isn't it? Do your spiders communicate? Like, how do they tell each other what to do?
Yes, that is the vibration is their mode of communication.
Yeah, that's crazy. So are they using like stories to tell each other? Like, can you understand those vibrations? Do you know what
That would be amazing if I could. I can't know, but it's more like think about it in them as being musicians because it's all vibrations like music is, right? So they tell each I don't know if they tell each other stories. They certainly pass on information about, this is my spot or I need this or you need that. Via vibration, so they sort of pluck at the silk. They also they get a lot of information from their environment via these vibrations and their webs. So their webs kind of function as their we call it extended phenotype in a sense. So it's their you can imagine that they I don't know how to explain it other than they gain information from a larger area of space due to their silk structures in their webs.
A little bit like, I mean, you could be like Morse code or something.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, I read one somewhere, I can't remember where, but yawning like is a bit of a mystery why it exists. And I read that someone thought that it was actually a mode of communication. It was like a pre-language method of communicating to a social group that everything's cool and everyone can just chill out. No need to worry. There's no predators. You know what I mean? But that taps back to that idea that nature is actually quite a dangerous place. And
but what I like, Dan, what I really like about your art is that it's really positive. It always has a really positive message.
Yeah.
And I think, of course, art, one of the aims of art is provoke some sort of emotion, right? That's why we like art. That's why we engage with art. It's because it engages our emotions. So, do you feel like as an artist, I'll ask both of you this, do you feel like as artists that you have a responsibility in a way to convey positive messages about nature? No? Yes?
For me, no. Like what I want to do is convey complexity. I want to sort of I don't use like gallery. I haven't made gallery art like David does, which is just exists for itself. My work often exists for a purpose defined by the people that are commissioning it, but I actively look for work that helps everyone, helps us as a society, community, to engage with complicated or troubling issues. That's what I want my practice to do.
There is a question from Cass. Could you comment on the role games might play in holding space for risk and the unexpected?
This is kind of Dan and I's modus operandi.
Yeah.
As in a lot of the games that we make together are very much about creating situations that you have to react to, and then kind of the stories evolve that way. I think what's interesting about tabletop role play, which is sort of different from collaborative storytelling. Collaborative storytelling, wonderful thing, and it's kind of completely unbounded, or can be unbounded. Yeah. Like it's like just this happens and this happens, and what if there was something in a tree? But what a role-playing game does is it sets a set of kind of markers around it, a set of kind of borders, and it says this is within the realms of possibility of this thing, and then through kind of the mechanics of the game or something, unexpected things can happen, and you have to react to that. You have to kind of constantly think about, we're not just living in stasis, like there's now this great threat over here that we have to deal with. Do we run away from it? Do we walk towards it? Do we kind of try and have a conversation with it? All of these things are possible and open, and creates a sense of a world in flux and a world that you have to actually negotiate, that you can't. And often, especially in the games that we create, and I would say in the kind of realm of the OSR, which is the old school Renaissance, old school revival type role play, is often you're not going to solve things through violence, which is what you kind of associate with things like Dungeons and Dragons or something, is that, well, I'm just going to hit everything. Like actually in the games that we like to play, it's very much like most things, if you attack them, you will die. So that will be the end of your game. So you have to find ways around these situations or kind of, find clever ways of negotiating the scenario to your favor, rather than kind of going just kind of doing the automatic violence thing.
A huge thank you to David, Daniel and Lena. Join us for the next Nature Calling conversation between Jason Singh, Gwyneth Herbert and Chris Howard, the commissioned artists for Mendip Hills National Landscape. And please visit naturecalling.org.uk to find out more about the programme.